Michael Blackwood's coffee had gone cold. He hadn't touched it since entering his Pentagon office at 600 and finding something, sitting in his chair. The entity wore an impeccable black suit that seemed to absorb the fluorescent lighting, creating a pocket of shadow in the sterile government office. "You're trying to decide if you're hallucinating," the figure said, its voice carrying the weight of eons. "You're not." Blackwood's 20 years in military intelligence hadn't prepared him for this. The figure's face kept shifting, impossible to focus on, like trying to remember a dream. "Then I'm dead." A sound like grinding granite. Laughter. "Not yet. Though that's rather the point of this meeting." The entity gestured to the chair across the desk. "Please, sit. It's rather awkward having you loom in your own office." Blackwood sat, his training kicking in. Assess. Analyze. Adapt. The entity's suit rippled, revealing glimpses of infinite darkness beneath. "Your death. Among other names, yes." Death leaned forward, and reality bent slightly. "Humanity is about to make first contact. The Galactic Council has noticed your achievements in faster-than-light travel. They're concerned." "Threatened," Blackwood corrected, earning another granite laugh. "Precisely. They've seen your potential, your adaptability, your remarkable talent for survival. The Council has eliminated promising species before. They prefer conformity to competition." Blackwood's mind raced through the implications. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm offering you a job." Death stood, and the shadows in the room stretched impossibly. "Every century, I choose an avatar to maintain cosmic balance. You're uniquely qualified. Military background, diplomatic training, and most importantly, you understand that endings are tools, not goals. You want me to be Death's ambassador. Earth's ambassador who happens to be Death. The distinction matters." Death moved to the window, gazing at the dawn. "The Council will try to kill you, of course. Multiple times. Rather ironic, really." Blackwood's training screamed that this was insane, but a deeper instinct, the same one that had kept him alive in Pakistan and Mars Colony, whispered that this was real. "What's the catch?" "You'll have to die first. Publicly. Messily. Then return 3 days later, changed." Death turned, its form solidifying into something almost human. "You'll feel every death you cause. You'll carry the weight of every soul you harvest. And you can never tell anyone what you really are. And if I refuse, then humanity faces the Council alone. Their peacekeepers will arrive within the year. Earth's population will be reduced to a manageable level. Their words, not mine. Those who survive will serve as client species, carefully monitored to prevent further advancement." Blackwood stood, squaring his shoulders. "That's not much of a choice. The best ones never are." Death extended a hand that was simultaneously flesh and void. "Do you accept?" The dawn light caught Blackwood's wedding ring as he reached out. "Sarah will never forgive me for dying. Your wife is stronger than you think. The question is, are you?" Their hands met. Ice flooded Blackwood's veins, and knowledge older than stars poured into his mind. He saw the cosmic web of life and death, the delicate balance he would help maintain. He saw the Council's atrocities, the civilizations they'd erased, and he saw humanity's potential, not just to survive, but to change the very nature of galactic society. "The car accident will be at 7:45 tonight," Death said, already fading. "Try to relax. The first death is always the hardest." Then Blackwood was alone in his office, his coffee steaming hot as if no time had passed. Only the lingering cold in his bones and the weight of ancient knowledge in his mind proved it hadn't been a dream. He picked up his phone and dialed home. Sarah answered on the first ring. "Hey," he said, his voice steady despite everything. "I'm going to be late tonight. Something came up at work." It would be the last truth he could tell her for a very long time. The Galactic Council's reception hall put Earth's grandest cathedrals to shame. Crystalline spires stretched kilometers high, their surfaces reflecting the light of 3 artificial suns. Michael Blackwood adjusted his tie, watching his reflection fragment across 1,000 prismatic surfaces. 3 days dead had changed him. His hair now held streaks of silver, and his eyes carried depths that no humans should. "Ambassador Blackwood," a melodious voice chimed. "How fascinating to meet a human who survived genetic reassembly." The Zalaxian ambassador glided toward him, her crystalline body refracting light like a living diamond. According to his briefing, her species had transcended organic form millennia ago. According to the knowledge death had gifted him, they'd transcended by massacring their organic rivals and stealing their technology. "Rumors of my death were greatly exaggerated," Blackwood smiled, channeling his best diplomatic charm. "Though I hear the same can't be said for your species' rivals in the sickness sector." The Zalaxian's light pattern flickered, the equivalent of a flinch. "You're remarkably well-informed for a primitive species. We're full of surprises." Blackwood accepted a glass of swirling purple liquid from a hovering servo drone. He recognized the neurotoxin immediately, distilled from the breath of dying stars, capable of killing 1,000 humans with 1 drop. The Zalaxians had used it on 3 emerging civilizations before. "A traditional greeting drink," the ambassador said, her crystalline form vibrating with barely contained anticipation. "From my homeworld's most ancient reserves." Around them, other council members had grown quiet, watching. This was his test. How Earth's ambassador handled a known toxin would set the tone for all future relations. The knowledge death had granted him whispered of politics, power plays, and the countless species who died in this very hall, victims of diplomatic accidents. Blackwood raised the glass in a toast. "To new friendships," he said, and drained it in 1 swallow. The liquid burned like supernovas, each molecule a tiny death. He felt them all. Death's gift ensuring he experienced every potential ending the poison offered. But instead of dying, he absorbed them, adding their power to his own. The glass crystallized in his hand, turning to diamond dust. The Zalaxian ambassador took an impossible step backward, her crystalline form resonating with fear. "That's not. You should be." Blackwood stepped closer, his shadow stretching unnaturally across the pristine floor. When he spoke, only she could hear him. "My turn." He reached out as if to shake her hand. Where their forms met, entropy accelerated. The ambassador's crystalline body began to age, not years, but eons. Her perfect lattices degraded, molecular bonds failing as time itself rejected her. "What are you?" she whispered, her voice crackling like breaking glass. Blackwood leaned in, his eyes reflecting the death of stars. "I'm humanity's response to your hospitality." The ambassador's form shattered, her consciousness dispersing into quantum dust. Around them, the reception fell silent. Blackwood straightened his tie, brushed some crystal fragments from his sleeve, and turned to address the shocked audience. "My deepest apologies," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast hall. "I appear to have had an adverse reaction to your traditional greeting. I do hope this won't affect our future relations." The message was clear. Earth wouldn't be an easy target. As Blackwood moved through the crowd, council members parted before him. His enhanced senses caught their whispered conversations, warnings, threats, and most importantly, fear. In his mind, death's knowledge showed him the ripples of this moment spreading through the galaxy. The council would respond with force now, but they'd do it carefully. They'd test him first, probe for weaknesses. They still thought this was a game they could win. Blackwood caught his reflection in a crystalline wall. For a moment, his shadow showed its true form, a hooded figure holding a scythe made of darkness. He straightened his already perfect tie and smiled. The game was just beginning, and he had eternity to teach them how to play. The Crack's ambassador's claws left gouges in the quantum steel table as she leaned forward. The human survived another accident yesterday. Around the private chamber, representatives of the Coalition's 7 most powerful species shifted uncomfortably. Security footage played on floating screens, Blackwood walking through a depressurized airlock, his suit torn to shreds but his flesh unmarked. The void of space seemed to embrace him like an old friend. "That's the 5th attempt this week," the Medusan patriarch hissed through his breathing apparatus. The temporal bomb should have aged him to dust. Instead, the ancient alien shuddered, his tentacles writhing. The footage shows him rewinding time itself. The Crack's ambassador, Supreme Hunter Vakera, bared teeth evolved to tear through battleship armor. "He's making us look like prey." New footage replaced the old. Blackwood in the Council's Grand Archive, calmly reading as security drones filled the chamber with plasma hot enough to melt stars. The flames parted around him like water. When he looked up at the cameras, his eyes reflected nothing. Literal nothingness. The void between galaxies. "Our best assassins report similar failures," the Shadow Consortium's representative whispered, its void-black form rippling with anxiety. "They say he feels wrong. Empty, like trying to kill a black hole." Vakera slammed a clawed fist down, cracking the table. "Then we stop with subtle. The Crack's empire didn't conquer half the Carina arm by being subtle. We are apex predators, not cowering prey. And how many of your hunter teams have returned?" The question came from the Architect, the Coalition's oldest member. Its mechanical body housed a consciousness that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless species. The human doesn't just survive. He harvests. Each failed attempt makes him stronger. New footage played. A Crack strike team cornering Blackwood in a quantum vault. The human's shadow stretched, growing teeth and claws that made the Crack's natural weapons look primitive. When the shadows receded, the hunters had been reduced to empty armor. Their life force, the Architect mused. He's collecting it, storing it. But for what purpose? Vakera leaned back, her predator's mind racing. "The pattern bothers me. He's being targeted by our best operatives, yet he keeps visiting locations where we have historical interests." The chamber grew still. They all knew what she meant. The Coalition hadn't maintained its power through diplomacy alone. Rising civilizations had to be pruned, potential rivals eliminated before they could threaten the cosmic order. "The Grand Archive," the Medusan patriarch muttered. "The quantum vaults, the temporal research facilities. He's tracking our interventions." "Impossible," the Shadow Consortium representative hissed. "Those records were purged, the evidence destroyed." Were they? The Architect's mechanical eyes flickered. Or did we simply hide them in death's shadow, where we thought no one could reach? A new alert flashed across the screens. Blackwood had just entered the Council's restricted Synorchaeology wing, where they kept artifacts from civilizations they'd guided to extinction. The security feeds showed him touching ancient relics, his eyes closed as if listening to voices only he could hear. "Enough," Vakera snarled. "If he wants to play with extinction, let's oblige him. The Crack's fleet stands ready. Earth will serve as an example of what happens to species that reach too far." The Architect's voice carried millennia of weariness. "You still don't understand what we're dealing with, do you?" Look at his eyes in the footage. Really look. They watched as Blackwood turned to face the camera. For a moment, his business suit became robes of interstellar darkness. His eyes held neither hatred nor anger, only the patient certainty of entropy itself. "We're not the hunters anymore," the Architect said softly. "We're just making his job easier." Vakera stood, her claws extending fully. "Then we stop playing by his rules. Prepare the fleet. Earth dies tomorrow." None of them noticed the shadow in the corner of the chamber, a darkness deeper than the void, watching with infinite patience as they orchestrated their own judgment. In the Xenorchaeology wing, Blackwood smiled. Everything was proceeding exactly as Death had planned. Station Omega hung in the void like a metallic spider's web, its quantum arrays gleaming with artificial starlight. In the station's diplomatic chamber, Michael Blackwood studied the peace treaty before him, his expression neutral despite the trap's obvious nature. The Coalition extends its deepest apologies for recent misunderstandings, Vakera purred, her predator's teeth gleaming. This treaty will ensure humanity's protected status. Blackwood noted how the Crack's ambassador's claws twitched with anticipation. The station's energy readings were off the charts, enough power to run a small sun. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. Fascinating design, he said, gesturing to the chamber's crystalline walls. Psychic dampeners in the architecture, temporal stabilizers in the floor, and he sniffed the air. Is that dimensional phase-shifting technology? Someone went all out. The coalition members exchanged glances. The human shouldn't have been able to detect any of that. Standard diplomatic security. The Medusan patriarch wheezed through his breathing apparatus. Surely Earth understands the need for privacy. Oh, I understand perfectly. Blackwood signed the treaty with a flourish. Just like I understand this station isn't a station at all. It's a weapon. Vakera's smile widened. Now, reality twisted as Station Omega revealed its true nature. The diplomatic chamber transformed into the heart of the largest soul extraction engine ever built. Quantum fields designed to tear consciousness from matter enveloped Blackwood. Time dilation fields trapped him in a bubble where seconds would stretch into centuries of agony. For the first time since accepting death's offer, Blackwood laughed. Finally, he said, his voice carrying despite the reality-warping energies, I can stop pretending. His business suit burned away, revealing robes woven from the darkness between stars. His shadow exploded outward, filling the chamber with teeth and eyes, and endless hunger. Where it touched the quantum fields, reality itself began to unravel. Impossible. The Shadow Consortium representative tried to flee, its void-black form rippling with terror. The engine is powered by a dying star. Nothing cold. A dying star. Blackwood's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. How appropriate. He reached out, and the station's power source, a captive star in its death throes, answered to its true master. The soul extraction engine, overloaded as stellar death energy, poured through its circuits, turning the Coalition's ultimate weapon into a conduit for death itself. Vakera launched herself at him, claws extended. What are you? Blackwood caught her in mid-leap, his hand around her throat. I am what you made me. Every assassination attempt, every accident, every drop of poison. They were all sacrifices to death. To me. The station's sensors captured everything as Blackwood's true form manifested fully. The business attire and human flesh became a mere memory as Death's avatar revealed himself. His scythe, formed from the dying star's last light, harvested souls with every swing. Your weapon was designed to extract and store souls, he told the cowering Coalition members. Let me show you where those souls have been waiting. The chamber filled with ghostly figures. Billions of them. The spirits of every species the Coalition had eliminated. They swirled around Blackwood like an honor guard, their combined voices rising in a chorus that shattered dimensional barriers. The souls remember, Blackwood said, his words carrying the weight of entropy itself. They remember how they died, why they died, and who gave the orders. Vakera, still held in his grip, watched in horror as spectral claws tore through her guards. The Council will retaliate. You'll what? Blackwood's laugh caused temporal sensors across 3 sectors to overload. Tell them how your ultimate weapon became my ultimate revelation. He released her, letting her collapse to the floor. Around them, Station Omega began to fold in on itself, its magnificent engineering reduced to scrap by forces it was never meant to contain. Consider this a formal rejection of your peace treaty. Blackwood straightened his reforming tie, human flesh flowing back over cosmic horror. Earth doesn't negotiate with genocidal empires. As emergency transponders whisked the Coalition members to safety, they caught a final glimpse of Blackwood. He stood in the station's disintegrating heart, a smile on his human face, while his shadow danced with billions of vengeful souls. The message was clear. The game was over. The real harvest was about to begin. Sarah Blackwood was finishing her morning coffee when the Crack's fleet appeared above New York. Through her apartment window, She watched dagger-shaped warships tear holes in the atmosphere, their hulls black as deep space. The news had barely started broadcasting mornings when a familiar voice spoke behind her. "You should see London. They sent twice as many ships there." She turned to find her dead husband standing in their kitchen. Michael looked exactly as he had 3 months ago, except for his eyes. They held something ancient now, something that made her coffee go cold. "You're not really him, are you?" she asked, surprising herself with her steadiness. "I am. Just more now." Michael, or what wore Michael's shape, touched her coffee mug. The liquid began steaming again. "I wanted to tell you every day." Above them, the first Crack's energy weapons began firing. But before the blasts could reach the city, skeletal hands emerged from every shadow, catching the beams like fireflies. Sarah watched as her husband's shadow stretched across their kitchen floor, growing teeth and claws that would give Vakera nightmares. The Cracks targeted every major Earth city simultaneously, he said, straightening his tie. "They're about to learn why that was a mistake." Across the globe, the scene repeated. In Tokyo, businessmen looked up from their phones to see Blackwood walking through plasma fire, his suit burning away to reveal robes woven from cosmic darkness. In Moscow's Red Square, tourists filmed as he stepped out of a child's shadow to catch a falling warship, his scythe cleaving it in two. "Death chose me," he told Sarah as reports flooded in from every continent. "Chose humanity, because we understand something they don't, that ending things isn't the same as destroying them." In Rio, citizens watched their Christ, the Redeemer statue, cast a shadow in the shape of Death's avatar. Its arms spread wide as Blackwood emerged from its heart to harvest a Crack's battle fleet. In Cairo, he walked through the pyramid's ancient shadows, each step aging enemy ships until they crumbled to stellar dust. The Crack's commanders, watching their simultaneous global assault fail, made a desperate gambit. They launched their planet-killer weapons, devices that could crack Earth's crust and boil its oceans. The weapons never reached the atmosphere. Blackwood appeared in every ship's command center simultaneously, his human form barely containing the cosmic force within. "You still don't understand what you're fighting, do you?" Vakera, watching from her flagship, screamed orders to fire everything. Her crew watched in horror as their weapons passed harmlessly through Blackwood's form. "I am not some diplomatic obstacle to remove." His voice resonated through every ship's comm system. "I am the end of all things, the silence between stars, the darkness that waits." His next words carried the weight of eons. "And you have exhausted my patience." In their apartment, Sarah watched her husband raise his hand. Across Earth's sky, Cracked ships began to age centuries in seconds. Metal rusted, alloys failed, and living tissue turned to dust. But instead of falling to Earth, the debris gathered like metallic clouds, reforming into monuments, warnings written in the remains of a war fleet. "The Council needs to understand," Blackwood told his wife, even as his voice echoed in every Cracked ship and Earth communications channel. "Humanity isn't their prey. We're their punishment." The last Cracked ship, Vakera's flagship, hung above Manhattan. Its hull had aged 10,000 years in minutes, its crew reduced to quantum dust. Only Vakera remained, held in stasis, forced to watch as her mighty fleet became humanity's shield. Sarah stepped closer to her husband, seeing both the man she married and the cosmic force he'd become. "Will they retreat?" "No," he smiled, and for a moment she saw stars die in his eyes. "They'll escalate. The Council will commit its full force now." He turned to her, his form shifting between human and horror. "But first, I believe I owe you a proper explanation." "Over coffee." Above them, Vakera's flagship dissolved, its particles reforming into a message visible from orbit. "Death sends its regards." The game of shadows and diplomacy was over. Now came the war between gods and empires, with humanity's avatar of death leading the dance. The Galactic Council's emergency session descended into chaos the moment Blackwood walked through their quantum-sealed walls. Representatives from 800 species jumped from their seats, ancient defense systems activated, and 1,000 weapons targeted his heart. He smiled, adjusted his tie, and kept walking. "Please," his voice carried an echo of stellar death. "If your weapons had any effect, I'd be dead 1,000 times over." His shadow rippled across the chamber floor, touching each council member's feet. "Though I appreciate the warm welcome, the Council Supreme, a being of pure energy older than Earth's sun, spoke first. You dare violate the sanctity of sanctity." Blackwood's laugh caused the chamber's crystalline walls to vibrate. "Let's discuss sanctity." He gestured, and the air filled with holographic records, particularly the sanctity of life you claim to protect. The records showed everything. The Kraxus hunting grounds where developing species were culled, the Shadow Consortium sterilization programs, the Medusans' genetic weapons tested on pre-FTL civilizations, centuries of careful genocide, all in the name of maintaining order. These records were destroyed. The architect protested, its mechanical form trembling, purged from every database. "You can't purge what's written in death itself." Blackwood's suit rippled, showing the void beneath. "Every species you eliminated, every civilization you erased, they all passed through my domain. And death." He smiled, showing teeth that had never been human. "Death remembers." The chamber's air grew thick with spectral forms, billions of them, each a testament to the Council's true nature. A young alien child, vaporized in the Kraxus' first demonstration of power. A poet whose entire species was deemed evolutionarily aggressive. And sterilized. Entire civilizations reduced to stellar dust because they asked too many questions. We preserved order. The Council Supreme's energy form fluctuated with rage. Without our guidance, the galaxy would descend into chaos. Order. Blackwood was suddenly beside the ancient being, moving between moments. "Let me show you order." He touched the Council Supreme's corona, and every being in the chamber witnessed the truth. Humanity's countless opportunities to destroy rival species, to eliminate competition, to ensure their dominance. And every time, the choice to help instead, to uplift, to sacrifice their own advantages to preserve life. This is why death chose humanity. Blackwood's voice carried the weight of inevitability. Not because we're perfect, not because we're powerful, but because we understand something you forgot millennia ago. That power isn't measured by what you can destroy. He walked to the chamber's center, his form shifting between business suit and cosmic horror. We remember what it's like to be afraid, to be hunted, to face extinction, and we remember what it's like to choose differently. The spectral forms condensed, becoming clearer. Council members shrank back as faces from their past stepped forward. Leaders they'd assassinated, species they'd erased, civilizations they deemed too dangerous to exist. Humanity wasn't chosen to end things, Blackwood continued, his shadow touching every corner of the vast chamber. We were chosen to remind you of what you've lost. Your empathy, your wisdom. His eyes reflected the death of galaxies. Your souls. Vakara, still bearing scars from Earth's defense, snarled from her position. Pretty words from a species that now threatens us with extinction. Extinction. Blackwood laughed, and reality rippled. If I wanted you extinct, we wouldn't be having this conversation. He spread his arms, and the chamber filled with visions of possible futures. I'm offering you something far more terrifying than death. The council watched in horror as he revealed their true punishment: accountability. Rehabilitation. The long, painful process of facing what they'd become and choosing to be better. The age of hidden genocide is over, Blackwood declared, his voice carrying to every corner of the galaxy. The real question is, what will you become when you can no longer hide from your own reflection? The spectral forms moved closer, each bearing witness. The council members saw their victims not with hatred, but with the far more terrifying emotion: hope for redemption. Now, Blackwood straightened his tie, death's power flowing beneath his human guise. Shall we discuss the terms of your evolution? The council chamber hung suspended between moments as Blackwood presented their choices. Behind him, billions of spectral witnesses watched in silence, their combined presence making reality itself shiver. Option 1 is simple, he said, pacing before the assembled council. Continue as you are. Fight. Die. Feed my power until there's nothing left of your civilizations but cosmic dust and fading memories. His smile carried entropy's promise. I've already demonstrated how that ends. Vakera's claws left deep gouges in her ceremonial armor. And option 2. Redemption. Blackwood stopped pacing, his shadow splitting into 1,000 scythe-wielding forms. But not the easy kind you're hoping for. No simple apologies, no quick forgiveness. He gestured, and the chamber transformed. The council members found themselves standing on a devastated world, one of countless they'd shepherded to extinction. The air still carried echoes of screams from 1,000 years ago. Every species you destroyed had the potential to change the galaxy. Blackwood continued, walking through the ruins of what had once been a magnificent city. The Lyrans could have cured temporal decay. The Nexus Collective would have united organic and artificial life peacefully. His eyes reflected the ghosts of futures murdered in their cribs. The Children of Dawn would have taught you how to speak with stars. The Council Supreme's energy form flickered with something almost like shame. What would you have us do? Choose one. Blackwood's voice carried both judgment and opportunity. Each of you, select a species you helped destroy. Resurrect them using your combined technology and knowledge. Then spend the next 1,000 years as their protectors, their servants, their guides toward what they should have been. The chamber erupted in protests. The architect's mechanical form whirred in calculation. Impossible. The genetic records, the cultural databases, are all preserved in death's domain. Blackwood stepped forward, and his business suit melted away completely, revealing his true form. Every moment of their existence, every potential they carried, safe in my keeping, waiting. He raised his hand, and spectral DNA strands appeared. The complete genetic history of every destroyed species. I can restore them exactly as they were, but you will bear the weight of their redemption. You will serve those you once saw as beneath you. The Medusan Patriarch's breathing apparatus hissed with barely contained rage. And if we refuse? In answer, Blackwood simply looked at Vakera. The Crack's ambassador felt it first. The creeping cold, the sensation of years spinning forward like seconds. Her mighty form began to age, muscles withering, scales dulling. Around her, her personal guard experienced the same, their proud warrior forms crumbling to dust. But instead of disappearing, the dust rose, swirling with purpose. It gathered, reformed, transformed. Where Crack's warriors had stood moments before, new forms took shape. The first members of a species the Cracks had hunted to extinction 10,000 years ago. Beautiful, aren't they? Blackwood asked as the resurrected beings opened their eyes for the first time in millennia. The Lumini, a species that could weave light into consciousness. You killed them because their technology would have made stealth weapons obsolete. Vakera, now the only Cracks remaining in the chamber, fell to her knees before the reborn Lumini. In their eyes, she saw not hatred, but the weight of possibility. All they had been, all they could become again. The choice remains, Blackwood announced to the chamber, his voice carrying the finality of cosmic law. Accept your role in resurrection and redemption, or face entropy's judgment. Choose quickly. His smile carried the patience of eons. I have all the time in existence, but your species don't. One by one, council members stepped forward, naming the species they would resurrect and serve. Each choice caused ripples in reality as ancient wrongs began their long journey toward right. The Council Supreme was the last to choose. Its energy form dimmed with the weight of memory. The Children of Dawn, it whispered, let us restore those who would have taught us to sing with stars. Blackwood nodded, and the chamber filled with the first notes of a song that had been silenced for 1,000,000 years. The resurrection had begun. Death's avatar straightened his reforming tie, human guise flowing back over cosmic horror. Congratulations on choosing evolution over extinction. Now, shall we begin your first lesson in humility? 1 year after the Great Resurrection, Michael Blackwood stood in his Pentagon office, watching Earth's second sunrise. The first came from the system's natural star. The second from the reborn Lumini capital ship, its light-weave technology illuminating the morning sky with memories of their ancient civilization. Sarah sat in what had once been his chair, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. The Children of Dawn made contact with Alpha Centauri's star consciousness yesterday, she said, now serving as Earth's primary diplomat to the restored species. Apparently, stars have been trying to talk to us for billions of years. We just didn't know how to listen. And the Council Supreme. Sarah smiled. Still learning stellar linguistics from the children, it once ordered destroyed. They say it's making progress, though it took 3 months to learn how to say hello in solar flare. Blackwood's shadow rippled with something like amusement. The former council chamber, now transformed into the Galactic Reconciliation Center, hosted daily sessions where once mighty species learned humility from those they try to erase. The architect spent its days helping the Nexus Collective rebuild their quantum consciousness networks. The Medusan Patriarch's biological expertise now served to restore ecosystems his people had poisoned. The other cosmic forces have revealed themselves, Blackwood said, his form shifting slightly as he sensed their presence. Tyne chose the Cronus Collective, a species everyone thought was myth. Life speaks through the cedars of Vega. Even chaos found its voice among the quantum dancers. And they all chose species that the Council tried to destroy, Sarah noted, almost like it was planned. Blackwood's laugh carried echoes of stellar death. Death plays the longest game of all. He turned to his wife, his eyes reflecting both human love and cosmic power. We needed humanity's capacity for both judgment and mercy. The other forces needed voices that understood loss and rebirth. Through the window, they watched a cracked ship, now permanently transformed into a living garden world for displaced species, take up orbit alongside the Lumini vessel. Vakera herself tended the gardens, learning the names and stories of every species her people had hunted. Her weekly reports to Earth were filled with equal parts shame and wonder. There are still holdouts, Sarah said, pulling up new intelligence. The Shadow Consortium's outer rings are talking about resistance. Some of the Medusan hardliners think they can wait us out. Let them try. Blackwood's smile carried the weight of inevitability. Fighting death is like fighting time or entropy. You can delay, but you can't win. His shadows stretch, showing glimpses of his true form. Besides, they're missing the point. This isn't punishment, it's evolution. A notification chimed. The first joint session of the Cosmic Forces Council was about to begin. Representatives from every restored species would attend, their former destroyers now serving as their honor guard. The galaxy was learning a new dance, one where power meant creation instead of destruction. Ready to go? Sarah asked, standing. Blackwood straightened his tie, a gesture that now carried both human habit and cosmic significance. Almost. He pulled something from his pocket, the original death certificate from his car accident 2 years ago. With a smile, he let it crumble to dust. No more masks, he said. No more hiding. The dust swirled, reforming into a new document. His credentials as both Earth's ambassador and Death's avatar. The galaxy needs to remember that every ending carries the seeds of beginning. Sarah took his arm, unafraid of the cosmic force wearing her husband's shape. Above them, the Lumini ship's light painted Earth's sky with stories of resurrection. Below, in every shadow, billions of spectral witnesses watched the dawn of a new age. The council races were learning mercy, the restored species were learning forgiveness, and humanity was learning its true role, not as conquerors or victims, but as guardians of life's endless cycle. "Well then," Blackwood said, his voice carrying both warmth and mourning, "shall we show them how the dance continues?" Together, they stepped into humanity's shadow, emerging in the new council chamber where gods and mortals, destroyers and restored, gathered to write the next chapter in the galaxy's story. The age of hidden genocide was over. The age of cosmic renewal had begun.